I have had a passion for the city of Detroit for as long as I can remember. I love going downtown to be able to go to restaurants, visit some of the buildings, and be able to listen to shows in all the amazing theaters that downtown has to offer. I have had a great appreciation for the arts for several years now. I studied voice, specifically opera, for over 5 years, so I really love being able to go to real shows, be able to hear people perform live. I also have a really big passion for architecture. I love being able to go on tours of buildings, be able to hear about the stories of all the men who worked on the buildings, be able to hear about the financial situations, just the different events that were going on in the world at the time. I love being able to get the history behind what happened when a building was built. I love being able to see how the building came together and hear about all the different things that happened to make the project come together. Finally, I have a great love for history, and I specifically love to be able to tell others about history. Every time my friends and I go to somewhere downtown, I always point out all these different places that I've heard about and be able to tell them all these different things that I know. I love being able to share history with people. It's one of my great passions. And one of the most amazing buildings downtown that has such an amazing history is the Fox Theater. And this really combines all of my different passions. My love of Detroit, my love of the arts and architecture. There's all of these together in the Fox Theater. It's a beautiful, beautiful location that houses different shows all the time throughout the season, and it just embodies so much of what I love. And one of the things I would love to be able to do is give a tour to different people and be able to tell them about the Fox Theater. There's a great opportunity to be able to give a tour of the Fox Theater downtown. There's already a company that offers some tours throughout some different buildings in the city, specifically the Fisher Theater and the Guardian Building, as well as the Packard plant. So there's already some tours that go on in the city, but as of right now, the only tour that is offered for the Fox Theater is offered by Olympia Entertainment, which owns the theater itself, as well as Little Caesars Arena, the Comerica Park, and several other places downtown. It has quite a large influence on the city. If you go on Olympia's website and you find the Fox Theater page, you will be able to find a tour. But based on what little effort has gone into the website itself, you can kind of tell that it's not really something that they push. They have their interest in many different things other than tours of the Fox Theater. So it is something that is still quite open. Because of this, I think it would be great to be able to give my own tour of the Fox Theater, as it is something that I really love. I love the history of the building and being able to tell others about what has gone on in the specific theater. And because Olympia doesn't seem to take too much interest in this, I think I would be able to talk them into letting me at least work for them, if not take over the tour for the building. So I think the opportunity is definitely there for this idea that I would like to pursue. So I think this would be a fantastic way to share my passion and my love of architecture, the arts, and the building itself with others by offering a tour to those in the city. I believe that the target market for this tour would be the older generation, people ranging from about 50 upwards. I think that this is a great activity for them to do over the weekends. It doesn't require a whole lot of energy, a whole lot of movement. Some walking around would be some good exercise, but I would say that the older generation tend to have more of an appreciation for history, for things like this. And also, I feel like a lot of older people would have a lot of memories in the Fox Theater as well, as it was really in its heyday back when they were younger. So I think the main market for this would be the older generation. I think the best way to reach these people would be the newspapers or maybe social media, as some older people have things like Facebook. I know a lot of different touring companies use Facebook pages and events when they are trying to advertise tours, and I think this is probably a pretty good way to reach older and possibly even the younger generations as well. I really have a desire to create more of a market for younger people as well. History is an amazing thing for the older people, but also for the younger. Younger people are able to learn from history. It's an amazing, amazing thing when we are able to learn from other people's mistakes and also their triumphs. And to learn about something like this, where the architecture is just so amazing and just some of the amazing people who were able to perform at a theater like this, I think would be very, very interesting for younger people as well. As far as how to market this for younger generations, social media is probably the best way. And although Facebook might not reach some of the younger people, I would say things like Instagram or possibly even Twitter would probably be better options as far as getting the word out. Maybe sending large email groups, I believe, would also be a really good way to get the word out to both older and younger people. The execution of this plan might be the harder part of the whole idea. Because Olympia Entertainment does currently offer tours for the Fox Theater, it might be a little bit difficult for me to start my own private tour. I don't know if it would include purchasing the touring rights or just partnering up with Olympia, possibly even working for them. If that was necessary, I would be totally willing to do that, as this would be something that would interest me even if it wasn't just my own company myself. I would totally be interested in working for Olympia and hopefully really making more people aware of the tour rather than just their small website that they currently have. If I was able to do so, I would like to do my own tour separate from Olympia's, and that way I could have a little more freedom for what I would like to say, what I would be able to show. Again, that would require a lot of working with them to be able to figure out which rooms I would be allowed to go into, which backstage, if there's any parts of that that are roped off to the public. As far as the marketing, that's another big part of the execution, which I mentioned before. I really have to work on spreading the word about tours. It's not something people really go and look for. It's more something if they happen to see, they might become interested in. So marketing would be a huge part of the execution. And again, I would say the best way would be either social media or mass mailings perhaps, and definitely mass emails. I think that would be a great way to reach more people. So overall, the execution would be a couple different things. So again, mainly talking with the actual company that owns the theater, having to get through all of that red tape, being able to jump through hoops for that, and then really being able to market it, be able to show many people that it is available. If I was able to do a self-employed type of company, I think that would be ideally what I would like to do. If it was just me, I would start off before I even started offering the tours. I would start with a lot of research. I already know a decent amount about it, but it will never hurt to know more than you think you will need. I would love to do more research about it, be able to talk to some people who perhaps performed there in the past, who worked there in the past. I think that would be a really great aspect, something people don't usually look for in a tour. The next thing would be perhaps hiring a friend who also has a love of theater and history as well. I actually have a friend who would fill these shoes very well. I think it would probably take more than one person to be able to do tours, as it would be a little bit difficult for just one person to handle, especially if there's a large group. It would most likely only be a part-time job. I'm thinking that it would probably be best to do 2 or 3 different time slots on either a Saturday or perhaps an evening during the week. I think that would be the best way to do it. It would be, I would assume, about an hour. If we did during the week, it would probably be maybe 2 nights during the week. We would advertise those. If it were over the weekend, it would again probably be 2 or 3 different times throughout the day. And if we had enough people, which would be great if we did, then both myself and my friend would be able to both lead separate tours, possibly at the same time or maybe at different times, depending on how many people we got interested. But altogether, it would have to be a full-time job. I don't think we would constantly have enough people to want to run tours every single day. It would definitely be just part-time, but hopefully over time we'd be able to make it grow into something a lot bigger. If we were able to get the tours going, it would definitely start with self-funding. There isn't a whole lot that should have to go into getting this tour started. It mainly is research, and if we have to buy rights from Olympia, that would be where the major costs would come from. As far as what we would charge for people, I think if we offered 2 different times, if we did a shorter one about an hour, if we maybe charged about $7 for that, if we did an hour and a half, if we charged 10, I think that would cover it pretty well. We could maybe do a group discount if a class wanted to come, or maybe a group of older people who do things like this together. If we did a group discount, I think that would also be very helpful in being able to get more people in. As far as future finances, there's a company that already does tours throughout the city. They do a couple different buildings, including the Fisher Building, the Guardian Building, a couple others, but their name is Pure Detroit, and they do tours for free, but they make more of their money through selling merchandise after the tours. They have stores set up in a few different buildings throughout the city. So while they do the tours, they make most of their money, if not all, from the merchandise that they sell. If at one point we were able to grow big enough, be able to get enough people, it would be definitely worth looking into partnering up with Pure Detroit. And that would possibly mean that we wouldn't be making money off of tours anymore, but we would be making money off of the merchandise instead, which I think is a fine way to go. That's the way that Pure Detroit does it, and I think so far the system is working. They have a good following on social media. They are able to really get their merchandise out there, and they have so far had some very good financial success, so I think that would be a great thing to be looking into. The question of why is a very important one. I consider history to be a very important aspect of our learning, and that includes all of my generation as well as everyone older and younger than me. Learning about the history of our city, of our country, and of our world is very important. We get to learn from others and be able to figure out better ways to improve the future. Especially when it comes to do with our city, I believe it's very, very important. Detroit has such a vast wealth of amazing history. Everything from the car industry to amazing advances in the department store industry. There's just so many different ways that Detroit has taken steps forward. And that starts from many, many years ago, but how else would we learn about it if we didn't study history? I think it is very, very important. And when we study history, especially the history of Detroit in this case, we'll create a deeper love for Detroit and have more of a common goal to be able to make Detroit so much greater in the future. By studying things like the Fox Theater, it really improve all of our culture and not just the history, but we'll also be able to learn a lot about the arts and the amazing things that the arts have to offer. Music has touched so many different people, and although there's different types of music, so many of them can be represented by the Fox and all of the different theaters that Detroit has to offer. By learning about the history and even how the theater works, we are able to learn so much more about the music and what Detroit has had to offer over the years. Detroit is definitely full of amazing history that we should always be more willing to learn about. How I would start the tour has already been discussed. I would begin with giving the tour by myself. I would have to do a lot of research and use the knowledge that I've already gained just in my own curiosity from reading different books and articles online. I would still have to do definitely a lot more research before I would be able to do this, but it's something I would totally be willing to do and be very fascinated by. But after that, I would have to do a lot of working with Olympia Entertainment to be able to get the rights to do this. So that is definitely a big part in the how process. If I ever was to be able to create enough interest, I would have someone else to do the tours with me. And again, if we ever got to so many people where we couldn't handle it at all, I would definitely look into partnering with Pure Detroit, where they do the tours of different buildings throughout the city and they sell merchandise. If I was ever to be able to continue on my own rather than partnering with someone else, I think it would be great to introduce a self-guided tour where people are able to take a machine of some sort and be able to walk around to different parts of the theater, be able to push buttons and listen to different segments about what is going on in that different part of the area. I think that would be a really great way to be able to learn on your own, be able to go at your own pace, be able to look at what you want for as long as you want. Another cool way of doing this would be to create an app. This would be something that I would definitely need help doing, as I'm not quite as technically savvy as most, but that would be something I would definitely love to look into. If an app would be doable, I think it would be a very good asset to have for a tour where you could click on things, be able to see pictures possibly of what it looked like in the past, what different people have performed there. Just there would be so much that we could add to an app that I think would be a really great addition in the future. What the tour will include is definitely the most fascinating part of this whole process. There's so much that has to do with the theater. The whole process of getting a play to come to the theater, to the janitorial services, to who's going to be doing the concessions. There's so much that goes into what a theater has to offer. But I would think that there'd be three things that I would choose to do the tour on: the architecture, the backstage experience, and the history of the theater itself. As far as the architecture, the lobby is incredible to look at, with huge columns lining the foyer and just amazing architecture throughout the whole building. And the ceiling in the theater itself is stunning with a beautiful chandelier. There's just so much to talk about and explain, and just so many things to show people. As far as backstage, it's a very cool thing to be able to see where people do the makeup and rehearse their lines, be able to see all the cables and the curtains. There's just a lot of technical things that go on backstage that I know a lot of people would be interested in. And as far as the history, I know there's been some amazing people who have sung there. My personal favorite would be Frank Sinatra. I am a total nerd for old songs. I love old people from the 40s and 50s, old singers. So that to me is an awesome piece of history that Frank Sinatra sang at the Fox Theater. But stories like that, where people would be able to relate a little bit more to the history, and when you hear people that you've heard of, when you hear their names being mentioned, it just makes it a lot more personal when you know that you are in the same place that some famous people were in the past. So to give the history of the theater, not only who was there, but who helped to build it, I think it's a really neat way of learning more about the history around you. 10 years from now, 2027, and how will this possible tour industry thrive? Well, as I mentioned before, introducing better technology to the tour would be an amazing aspect. Having the self-guided tour technology and possibly having an app would be a huge help and would make it much more interesting, hopefully for the younger generation. I think that would definitely make it more applicable to them. As far as thriving to other companies or other buildings, I believe that the Opera House and Orchestra Hall would be amazing buildings to take on if the Fox Theater is a success. The Opera House is across the street and very close, but has amazing architecture as well. Beautiful chandeliers, and is one of the buildings that really started to fall apart when Detroit started to head downwards a little bit. And to see it now, you would never know that it went through some hard times. Orchestra Hall is where the Detroit Symphony Orchestra plays, and it's a very fascinating building, as I have been able to sing there twice myself now. I love that building, love being able to go there and just experience what it's like to actually sing there. to be able to share that with others would be a great experience. So if we were ever to be able to increase the number of buildings and theaters that we were able to give tours of, those are the two that I would definitely look into. I already mentioned partnering with Pure Detroit. I think that if these tours were successful, Pure Detroit would definitely have an interest in working with us. I believe that they already have a tour of the Fisher Theater, so that is something that we would already have in common. They don't have a specific tour for the theater, although they do talk about it in passing when they're in the Fisher building. So if we were able to put an idea out to them for the Fisher Theater having its own tour, I think that would really open up some doors working with Pure Detroit. 10 years from now, the greatest challenge would definitely be developing that desire to learn more about the history of our city and of the theater itself. Younger generations don't have quite as much of a desire to learn about history, and that doesn't go for everyone because I know there's people that do, myself being included in that. But I think that really trying to develop that desire is what is going to be the hardest challenge. There's many other things that young people could be doing, but I think this is a very important one that more young people should be looking into. There's just so much history that's happened. The Fox was one of the first buildings that really was able to come back alive after Detroit started to really have its rebirth. The Ilitch family took it under their wing. It was the first building that they really tried to work on. Millions and millions of dollars were put into redoing this building. And to see pictures of before and after is just incredible. And from a history aspect, it's just such an amazing thing to be able to see people come together and be able to really pull this building back together. And what it does now is incredible. It brings people together all the time. There's thousands of people that go over the weekends and even during the week. They go to see shows, and it really brings the community back together. So really developing that desire for for the history of these buildings is really what is going to be the largest challenge. And once we overcome that obstacle, then of course we'll have no trouble at all trying to get people to come in. But we really just have to work at really promoting what we're trying to do, promoting how interesting it can be, how much fun it can be for older and younger people. And once we do that, I believe that that challenge will be hurdled and that we will be able to have a very successful tour. In summary, I think it is such an amazing opportunity to be able to make a plan like this as to what I would do if I were able to start the tour, and I think it's something that I'm definitely going to look into. There's just so much potential for increasing people's knowledge of Detroit and the history that has gone into it, especially as I've talked about the Fox Theater. There's just so much that the building has to offer. By giving a tour of it, there's just so many different things that people will be able to learn, from the history to the art behind it and the architecture, just so much that has gone into this building and just how much the city has improved, really being led by the Fox Theater, which is quite an amazing accomplishment. As I've mentioned, if we were able to get this really going and we were able to create more tours, the possibility of partnering with a company that already has a firm grasp on the touring industry would be such an amazing thing. To be able to partner with Pure Detroit and offer more tours throughout the city would be absolutely amazing. And I believe that it would be something really good to strive for. If we were able to make it to that point, then I think that we would really have succeeded in as far as an entrepreneurial aspect. As I've mentioned, I have such a great love for the city. I love reading about it. I love going downtown, being able to drive past the Foxes. Just makes me so excited. I love being able to see that sign light up and to be able to go there. I've been there for at least one play. I'm planning on going to another soon. And it's just so fascinating to me, and I would love to be able to share that with others, and I think the best way to do that would be a tour, which is why I chose that, and I just am so excited to be able to plan something like this. I'm very, very honored do something like this.